So right now, the smartest minds in Silicon Valley are spending, I mean, literally billions of dollars, right? Trying to build a skyscraper out of rowboats.
Yeah, which is just such a wild image, but it's true.
Right. Like they are utterly, completely convinced that if they just, manufacture enough of these wooden rowboats and stack them high enough and just build them fast enough, eventually they're going to touch the sky.
Which, I mean, if you know anything about physics, sounds completely absurd.
Completely absurd. But today, we're going to look at the actual mathematical and philosophical proof of why the entire artificial intelligence industry is currently building with the exact wrong materials. Because, you're constantly bombarded by these headlines, right? From thought leaders promising that artificial general intelligence, or AGI, a machine that can actually think and reason and understand exactly like a human, is practically already here.
Oh, yeah. It's always like 5 years away.
Exactly. We're told we are on this, guaranteed, inevitable path to either a utopian paradise where machines solve all our problems, or a dystopian nightmare where they just conquer us completely.
Right, the whole Terminator scenario. But, that narrative of inevitability is arguably the most successful, most heavily funded marketing campaign in human history.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Because we're living in a moment where questioning the trajectory of artificial intelligence isn't just unpopular, it's treated as like a heresy by the people holding the purse strings.
Oh, totally. You get shunned.
You do. But when you strip away the venture capital hype, the media frenzy and all the sci-fi extrapolations, you are left with a massive, glaring scientific void.
And that void is the sole focus of our deep dive today.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we are diving into the foundational arguments laid out in the introduction to the book, The Myth of Artificial Intelligence. And our mission here is to dissect the very architecture of human thought, the history of intelligence modeling, and the strict logic of computer science to expose the supposed inevitability of AGI for what it truly is, which is a culturally damaging myth.
Right. And to do that, we have to establish a baseline distinction that just gets entirely obliterated in popular discourse. We have to separate the possibility of true artificial intelligence from the inevitability of it.
Right.
Because those are fundamentally different epistemological categories.
Yeah, let's draw that line really clearly for everyone listening. Because the possibility of true AGI, a machine that actually possesses human-level cognition, that is a scientific unknown.
Yeah, it's an open question. It is. Maybe in 500 years, some, unimaginable breakthrough in physics or cognitive science will happen that allows us to engineer a true mind. We just don't know.
Right. And acknowledging that possibility is just intellectual honesty. I mean, we don't fully understand human consciousness, so we can't definitively rule out the possibility of, replicating it eventually.
Exactly.
But the myth, the narrative that's dominating our culture right now is the insistence that its arrival is strictly a matter of time based on our current trajectory.
Right, based on what we're doing right now.
Exactly. The myth claims that the tracks are already laid. That the algorithms we have today are the correct foundation, and we are just waiting for the compute power to scale up enough to reach the final destination.
It's the interstellar travel analogy.
Yes.
It is a scientific unknown whether humans might one day travel to, say, the Andromeda Galaxy.
Right.
It's possible. But the inevitability myth that we see in the tech industry today, it's pointing to the invention of a slightly faster, maybe more efficient jet engine, and telling the entire world, look, we are on a guaranteed straight-line path to another galaxy. It's just a matter of time and a few more engine upgrades.
Yeah, it's a complete sleight of hand. I mean, we are building faster jet engines, and let's be clear, incredibly impressive, highly complex jet engines. But we're pretending we've solved the physics of faster-than-light travel?
Which we haven't at all.
No. We haven't even discovered the physics required for that leap, let alone engineered it. So the immediate question that you have to ask becomes, why is this myth so pervasive? Why do incredibly intelligent engineers and CEOs perpetuate this specific illusion?
I mean, it's incentives, right? Trillions of dollars in market cap are entirely dependent on the public, the government, and the investors believing that these companies are building the ultimate God machine and not just a really good predictive text generator.
Exactly. The economic and cultural incentives to minimize the known, mathematical limitations of current AI are just overwhelming.
Yeah.
When you have futurists and tech billionaires operating as purveyors of this myth, they are projecting a narrative that ensures continuous capital flow.
Right, because if a CEO stands up and says, hey, everyone, we have engineered a highly useful statistical pattern matching tool, but we have absolutely zero scientific understanding of how to bridge the gap to actual reasoning.
The venture capital dries up.
Yeah,
Instantly.
yeah. The stock tanks.
Acknowledging a massive unsolved scientific mystery is terrible for business.
It really is. But so, if true AGI is a myth, then we have to ask, like, why are tech companies spending billions on it? Are they just lying? Or do they genuinely believe that scaling up these current models will magically turn them into conscious minds?
It's a mix of self-delusion, ideological zealotry, and economic imperative. And notice what happens when you try to point out the scientific reality to them.
Oh, yeah.
If you scrutinize the underlying architecture and suggest, like, we are nowhere near AGI, the immediate cultural response is to label you a Luddite.
Which is such a historically misunderstood term to begin with.
It really is.
But it's used today as a total weapon. You get accused of having this dangerously short-sighted view of the future, or just, being afraid of progress.
Yeah, and weaponizing the term Luddite is a highly effective rhetorical defense mechanism. By framing any rigorous algorithmic skepticism as an irrational fear of technology, these purveyors successfully just shut down the scientific conversation.
Right.
If you're labeled a Luddite, your mathematical arguments about the limits of neural networks, they don't even need to be addressed. You are simply dismissed as someone clinging to the past.
Which is crazy.
It is. But genuine respect for science demands that we look at the actual mechanics of what is being built.
Okay, but I want to play devil's advocate here for a second, because if you were listening to this, you interact with these systems daily. You see the astonishing capabilities.
Yeah.
I mean, an LLM can pass the bar exam. A generative model can create photorealistic video from a text prompt. And, like, AlphaFold solved a 50-year-old grand challenge in biology by predicting protein structures.
Which is amazing.
It is. So if the destination of human-level AI is not actually inevitable on our current path, why does it feel like we are accelerating toward it at breakneck speed?
You're hitting on the exact illusion that powers the entire industry right now. This is the scientific core of the myth, what we can call the chipping away fallacy.
The chipping away fallacy.
Yeah. The illusion of progress is maintained because we are constantly conflating narrow computational success with general cognitive capability.
The assumption that if we just keep, like, chipping away at these narrow applications, if we get a machine to play chess, then fold proteins, and write legal proofs eventually, all those narrow feats will inevitably coalesce into a generally intelligent machine.
And that assumption is structurally false.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, because success on narrow applications gets us absolutely 0 steps closer to general intelligence. Not one step.
Wait, not one.
Not one. Look, a neural network that predicts protein structures is a mathematical marvel, absolutely. But it possesses no broader understanding of biology, no concept of what a protein actually is, and it has 0 capacity to transfer that specific pattern matching skill to a completely different domain without being entirely retrained from scratch on a completely new data set.
Let's break down that chasm between narrow capability and general intelligence, because it goes completely against the scaling laws narrative we are constantly sold.
Right.
The idea that more data plus more compute equals a smarter machine.
Yeah.
Take autonomous vehicles, for example. We were promised fully self-driving cars next year for, the last decade? Why are they perpetually stuck at that 95% mark?
Because of the corner cases, which reveal the underlying lack of comprehension.
Explain that.
So, an autonomous vehicle relies on induction ingesting millions of hours of driving data to find statistical correlations. It recognizes a stop sign because it has processed millions of pixel arrangements labeled stop sign.
Right, it's seen it a million times.
Exactly. But if someone puts a few pieces of black tape on that stop sign, or if, say, a person dressed in a giant chicken suit runs across the road, the system fails. And sometimes it fails catastrophically.
Because it doesn't have a world model, it doesn't know what a chicken suit is, or that humans sometimes wear costumes, or that tape on a sign doesn't actually change the traffic law.
Exactly. It completely lacks context. It has pattern recognition, but 0 comprehension. When a human driver sees the person in the chicken suit, they instantly draw on a lifetime of broad contextual knowledge about the world. Pranks, Halloween, advertising to understand the situation and just hit the brakes.
Right.
The machine just sees a distribution of pixels that falls outside its training data, and it hallucinates or freezes.
Which is terrifying when you're in the car. Let's look at a modern LLM failure, too. Because we've seen lawyers use prominent AI models to write legal briefs, only to discover later that the AI entirely fabricated judicial opinions, case names, and citations.
Oh, that was a huge scam.
Huge. It hallucinated fake case law with, like, supreme confidence.
And that happens because an LLM does not possess a database of facts, nor does it understand the concept of truth. It's a highly sophisticated probability engine.
Okay.
It basically calculates the statistical likelihood of the next word based on the massive corpus of text it was trained on. So in the context of a legal brief, it knows that a citation usually follows a certain format, right? A name, a volume number, a reporter, a page number.
Yeah, the syntax.
Exactly. So it perfectly mimics the syntax of a citation, filling in mathematically probable words, completely unmoored from the reality of whether that case actually exists.
It's the difference between mimicking the structure of knowledge and actually possessing knowledge.
Yeah.
We are currently just picking the low-hanging fruit. Like, we're applying incredibly powerful, narrow versions of computation that benefit immensely from the brute force of modern processing speed and just mountains of scraped data.
Absolutely.
But the jump from that to actual common sense to an AI that knows why a fake legal citation is wrong or why the chicken suit shouldn't be run over is a completely different domain.
It's a qualitative leap, not a quantitative one. And you
Yep.
cannot cross a qualitative chasm just by adding more quantities.
Right.
Pumping billions of dollars into scaling up the parameter count of deep learning systems will not magically bridge this gap because there is no known algorithm for general intelligence.
None.
None. The tech industry basically operates on this unspoken hope that if you make the neural network big enough, true thought will just spontaneously emerge as an emergent property.
But hoping for spontaneous emergence isn't computer science. That's like digital alchemy. And to really grasp why scaling up deep learning algorithms fundamentally cannot achieve common sense, we have to look under the hood of human reasoning itself. We have to look at the mathematical and philosophical architecture of thought, dating all the way back to the ancient Greeks.
And this is where we move from critiquing the hype into the rigorous formal analysis of the problem. We have to examine what logicians call the problem of inference.
Right, the problem of inference.
This is the absolute center of gravity for the entire AI debate. Inference is fundamentally the process of drawing conclusions from premises or evidence. It's how minds work.
And our understanding of inference isn't some recent discovery from a Silicon Valley whiteboard, right? It was rigorously categorized by Aristotle and developed over centuries in formal logic and mathematics.
Exactly.
And because inference can be described using formal, symbolic systems, analyzing these types gives us an objective mathematical view of what it actually takes to engineer intelligence.
Right. Logicians generally outline three distinct types of inference: deduction, induction, and abduction. And the entire history of artificial intelligence research maps directly, and somewhat tragically, onto our attempts to engineer the first two while completely failing at the third.
Okay, let's walk through these step by step, starting with deduction.
Okay. Deduction is top-down reasoning. It is the realm of strict, formal logic. You start with general known rules or premises, and you arrive at a specific mathematically guaranteed conclusion.
Give me an example.
So the classic Aristotelian syllogism: all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. If the premises are true, the conclusion must be true.
There's no ambiguity. It's a closed system.
Exactly. And the first several decades of artificial intelligence, what we now call classic AI or good old-fashioned AI, GFA AI relied almost entirely on deductive reasoning.
This is back in the 50s, right?
Yeah. Beginning around the Dartmouth workshop in the 1950s, engineers tried to build minds using formal, symbolic logic. The idea was that if we could just write down all the rules of the universe in a symbolic language, like, LASP, a computer could logically deduce the correct action for any scenario.
It's the ultimate rule-based system. And I mean, it worked incredibly well for constrained environments, didn't it? Like chess.
Oh, yes. In a closed system like chess, with a fixed board, perfect information, and a finite set of rules, deductive AI is brilliant. But when classic AI tried to navigate the messy, open-ended real world, it hit a brick wall known as combinatorial explosion.
Combinatorial explosion. What's that?
It means you simply cannot pre-program every single rule, exception, and context for reality.
Ah.
Like if you try to program a robot to make a cup of tea using deductive rules, you have to write rules for the water temperature, the physics of the cup, what to do if the cup is cracked, what to do if the tea bag string breaks. The permutations are infinite.
Right.
Deduction cannot handle ambiguity.
So classic AI hit its structural ceiling. The deductive approach failed to produce AGI. And that leads us to the second type of inference, which is the engine of the current AI boom: induction.
Right. Induction is bottom-up reasoning. Instead of starting with absolute rules, you start with a massive amount of specific data points and you infer a general pattern or probability.
Okay.
So you observe 1,000 white swans and you induce the probabilistic rule that all swans are likely white.
And this is machine learning. This is deep learning, neural networks, the architecture behind literally everything from the YouTube recommendation algorithm to the largest language models today.
Precisely. Modern AI completely abandoned the rigid rulemaking of deduction and embraced the statistical probabilities of induction. It ingests massive data sets, billions of images, trillions of tokens of text, and uses gradient descent and backpropagation to adjust the weights in its neural network until it finds statistical correlations.
So it's just crunching numbers until a pattern emerges.
Yes. That is how it induces the pattern that pixels representing a stop sign look a certain way, or that the word mortal often follows Socrates's.
Okay, but I want to stop here and just aggressively push back on this on behalf of the listener.
Sure.
Because a very obvious mathematical question arises here. Classic AI explored the first type, deduction. Modern AI explores the second type, induction. Aren't we mathematically 2/3 of the way to general intelligence?
Yeah.
Like, if we've successfully engineered 2 of the 3 fundamental types of human reasoning, why are you framing the leap to AGI as this impossible mythical barrier?
Because treating the types of inference as a checklist where we just need to tick off the third box is a fundamental misunderstanding of cognitive architecture.
Really?
Yes, and that is the exact trap the inevitability myth relies on. It assumes that if we just push induction hard enough, it will magically transform into the missing piece. But to understand why that is mathematically impossible, we have to look at the third type of inference: abduction.
Abductive reasoning. Okay, this was largely formalized by the American philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce, right?
Yes. Abductive inference is the process of forming an explanatory hypothesis. It is how humans deal with incomplete information, surprise, anomaly, and context. It's the spark of insight.
The spark of insight.
Yeah. Think about it. When you walk into a room and see a shattered vase on the floor and your cat sitting on the table looking guilty, you do not use deduction. There is no strict logical rule that states cats always break vases.
And you don't really use induction either. I mean, I haven't been trained on a data set of 10,000 images of this specific cat breaking this specific vase to calculate a statistical probability.
Exactly. You instantly leap to a novel hypothesis that elegantly explains the observation. The cat knocked it over.
Right.
That leap is abduction. It is the generation of a new idea, a causative explanation that didn't explicitly exist in the prior data. It is the very foundation of common sense, of scientific discovery, and of, understanding the underlying human motivations when you read a news article.
But wait. When I log into ChatGPT and I ask it to write a highly specific, complex Python script to solve a unique problem in my workflow, a problem that has never existed before in that exact phrasing, and it spits out functional code. Isn't that abduction?
It looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's generating a hypothesis, it's creating something novel. How can you say AI isn't doing this?
Because that is a highly sophisticated illusion of abduction, but structurally, mathematically, it is still pure induction.
Oh, so?
What the LLM is doing is interpolating within a latent space. It has mapped the statistical relationships between billions of lines of code. When you give it a prompt, it mathematically locates the coordinates of your request within that multidimensional space, and it generates the most statistically probable sequence of tokens that connects those concepts.
Oh, wow.
It is blending existing patterns in a novel configuration, but it is not generating a novel explanatory paradigm.
So it's remixing the past, not hypothesizing the future.
Exactly. If you ask an LLM to debug a script based on standard errors, it's brilliant. But if you ask an AI to invent a completely new programming language based on a novel theory of quantum mechanics, it fails.
Because that wasn't in its training data.
Right, because that requires a true abductive leap outside the distribution of its training data. Abduction requires understanding causality in the real world. Induction only understands correlation in the data set.
And this brings us to the most damning structural reality in computer science right now. The text we are analyzing points out that when it comes to programming abductive reasoning, the exact type of inference required for general intelligence, No one is working on it
No one.
at all.
It is a stunning indictment of the entire field. We have no mathematical model, no theoretical framework, and no algorithm for how to code hypothesis generation. It remains a profound scientific mystery.
But if no one has the slightest clue how to engineer the one type of reasoning required for AGI, how on earth can the industry claim that AGI is right around the corner?
They claim it by relying on the assumption of irreducibility. The tech industry basically assumes that if you just stack up enough inductive operations, if you make the neural network massive enough, with 1 trillion parameters, abductive reasoning will somehow just emerge.
But it won't.
No, logic and mathematics demonstrate that these types of inference are distinct and irreducible.
Let's use a structural metaphor to really lock down this incompatibility argument. Because it's like alchemy, right?
Yes.
The AI industry is trying to create gold. Gold is abductive reasoning. But what they actually have is an incredibly efficient system for mining and refining lead. Lead is inductive reasoning.
That is a perfect analogy. You can build a mountain of lead. You can refine it perfectly. You can process billions of tons of it. But no matter how much lead you pile up, it will never, ever transform into gold.
Right.
The atomic structure is fundamentally different. Without a completely new scientific paradigm, without discovering nuclear transmutation, the lead just remains lead.
You can't just scale up the wrong material and expect a different architecture. Stacking millions of wooden rowboats will never give you the structural integrity of a steel skyscraper.
Exactly. The failure to build AI systems using the type of inference that undergirds general intelligence guarantees a failure to make progress toward artificial general intelligence.
Wow.
It is a logical certainty. If you are exclusively optimizing inductive pattern matching, you are not building AGI. You are just building a larger pile of lead.
So we have an entire global industry driving the stock market, consuming massive amounts of energy, and dominating our cultural anxiety, all built on an architectural fallacy.
Yes.
Which brings us to the profound cultural consequences of this deep dive. Because if this myth is so structurally unsound, what is the collateral damage? What happens to a society that reorganizes itself around a myth?
The damage is profound, and it operates on 2 levels: how we view machines and how we view ourselves. The AI myth has successfully expanded our ideas about technology while drastically simplifying and downgrading our ideas about human beings.
Okay, to understand how this happened, we have to look at the founders of the field. We have to look at Alan Turing.
Right. Turing is arguably the father of modern computer science. His work in the 1930s on the Turing machine formalized the concept of computation. But Turing made what we can now recognize as intelligence errors, which were, understandable simplifications for an engineer trying to build a machine in the 1940s, but profound errors when applied to biology.
Because he equated human intelligence entirely with calculation and symbol manipulation.
Exactly.
And the famous Turing test, or the imitation game, is entirely based on this. If a machine can manipulate text symbols well enough to fool a human via a teletype, it is deemed intelligent. It measures the output, the imitation, not the internal cognitive architecture.
Right. Turing reduced the vast, messy, biological reality of the human mind, our emotions, our embodied experience, our abductive insights, down to a mathematical abstraction of a tape processing symbols.
Right, which was a brilliant engineering shortcut, but a terrible model for actual cognition.
Yes. But those initial simplifications were taken as gospel by the field.
And they were magnified into a full-blown ideology by Turing's colleague, the statistician J. Good, right?
Yeah, J. Good. He's the man who first articulated the concept of ultra-intelligence, or what we now call the intelligence explosion.
The singularity.
Exactly. He theorized back in 1965 that once we build a machine that is slightly smarter than a human, that machine could then design an even better machine, leading to an exponential explosion of superintelligence that would just leave humanity in the dust.
But Good's theory relies entirely on a faulty mathematical assumption, doesn't it? It assumes that intelligence is a single linear variable like clock speed on a processor that can be endlessly optimized.
Precisely. It assumes intelligence is just raw processing power applied to induction. It completely ignores the bottleneck of abduction.
Right.
And it ignores the fact that in the real world, discovering new truths isn't just about thinking faster. It's about running physical experiments, gathering real-world data, and making paradigm shifts that aren't mathematically predictable.
So between Turing's simplification of humans as mere calculators and J. Good's magnification of machine potential, the modern myth was born. We basically downgraded ourselves and we upgraded our machines to inevitable future gods.
And that leads us to the specific cultural rot we are experiencing right now. The text uses a fascinating, devastating term to describe the era this myth has created. It calls it an era of technological kitsch.
Kitsch.
Yeah, kitsch is a really powerful framework for understanding our current relationship with AI. In art and cultural theory, kitsch refers to mass-produced, cheap imitations of deeper, genuine aesthetic or emotional experiences.
Oh, like the velvet painting of dogs playing poker.
Yes, or a Thomas Kincaid painting of a glowing cottage. It doesn't invite you to engage intellectually or emotionally, it just tells you exactly what to feel. It is pre-digested emotion.
We are now awash in technological kitsch.
We are.
Our AI systems today are brilliant imitators. An LLM acting as a therapist mimics empathy. An image generator mimics creativity. A chatbot mimics companionship. They are cheap imitations of deeper, profound human capacities.
Exactly. When we interact with them, we are essentially interacting with a statistical mirror, reflecting our own past data back to us in a pleasing format.
And the danger of kitsch is that it slowly degrades our capacity for the real thing. It cuts off intelligent engagement. It weakens our culture because it offers the illusion of depth where there is only surface.
And the purveyors of the kitsch, the tech monopolies, they benefit massively by capturing our attention and our data. But as consumers of this kitsch, we end up living in a shallower, simulated world.
It pacifies us.
It does, and this pacification has a direct chilling effect on genuine scientific inquiry.
How so?
Well, a healthy culture of innovation requires facing up to core mysteries, like the mystery of how abductive reasoning actually works in the human brain. We need fundamental research into cognitive science, biology, and physics.
But the mythology of inevitable AI success does the exact opposite.
Right. It hypes extensions of existing, inadequate methods. It sucks all the oxygen and all the funding out of the room.
It's a massive misallocation of scientific resources. Like, we get so mesmerized by the flashy parlor trick of an LLM that we stop doing the hard, fundamental science needed to understand true intelligence.
The text warns that this myth tends to extinguish the very culture of invention necessary for real progress. We become resigned to what it calls the creep of a machine land.
Machine learning.
Yeah. In this machine land, genuine human invention is sidelined in favor of futuristic talk advocating current approaches, mostly pushed by entrenched corporate interests who just want to sell us more compute.
Let's look at the collateral damage in other fields, actually.
Yeah.
Because how does this myth actively harm a discipline like, say, neuroscience?
Neuroscience is a tragic example because the dominant cultural narrative insists that the brain is essentially just a biological computer running deep learning algorithms. Neuroscience often gets dragged into trying to prove that flawed analogy.
Oh, what?
Yeah, researchers spend time looking for the biological equivalent of backpropagation, which likely doesn't even exist, rather than exploring the actual messy electrochemical reality of the brain. The computational metaphor actively limits the scope of biological discovery.
It's the old adage that when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Exact.
If we think intelligence is just data processing, we try to force the brain to fit that model.
Mm.
And what about data science? Because the text points out that data science itself is an incredibly powerful tool.
Oh, data science applying inductive AI to massive data sets to find statistical correlations is an absolute marvel. It is a wonderful prosthetic for human ingenuity. It can help a doctor flag anomalies in an MRI faster, or help a meteorologist model climate patterns.
A prosthetic. That is the crucial distinction. A tool designed to aid and enhance human abductive reasoning, not replace it.
Exactly. But the inevitability myth convinces us to use AI not as a prosthetic, but as a replacement for individual intelligence. When we try to replace human abductive reasoning, the doctor's holistic diagnostic judgment, the lawyer's strategic legal theory with machine inductive reasoning, we get hallucinations, errors, and a degraded system.
It chews up massive investment without delivering the promised cognitive replacement because the underlying architecture simply cannot do the job.
It's structurally impossible.
We are sacrificing the only true intelligence we actually know, our own human minds, at the altar of a superintelligent machine that does not and computationally cannot exist.
Yeah.
Wow. We have covered an immense amount of intellectual ground today, tearing down the facade of the biggest narrative in modern technology. Let's synthesize exactly what we've discovered.
Okay, so the foundational takeaway is that we must ruthlessly separate possibility from inevitability. The path to human-level AGI is not a guaranteed straight line. In fact, we are on the wrong path entirely.
Completely the wrong path.
We are currently stuck picking the low-hanging fruit of inductive reasoning, using massive computational brute force to find patterns in past data. We are completely ignoring the abductive reasoning, the novel hypothesis generation, and common sense required for true intelligence because it is a profound scientific mystery that we have no mathematical algorithm to solve.
And while the tech industry ignores that massive mystery to protect its market cap, we are intoxicating ourselves with technological kitsch. We are simplifying what it means to be human, reducing ourselves to mere calculators while artificially elevating statistical pattern matching machines to the status of inevitable gods.
Right.
So, if you are someone who has been losing sleep over the inevitable advance of superintelligence, the AI overlords, or the singularity, the formal logic and computer science we've explored today offer a rigorous reason to completely discount that sci-fi scenario.
The math simply does not support the panic. The underlying architecture of deep learning is structurally incapable of crossing the chasm to true cognition.
But that does not mean we are safe. The danger isn't that the machines will wake up and conquer us. The danger is much more insidious. We need to worry about the loss of human ingenuity, the erosion of our culture, and our refusal to respect genuine scientific mysteries. We are basically resigning ourselves to a shallow machine land of our own making.
Which leaves us with a final, chilling, logical extrapolation to consider.
What's that?
If we accept the reality that our current AI is merely kish, a shallow, inductive imitation trained exclusively on the massive backlog of human data, human art, and human writing, what happens to our culture when it runs out of genuinely new, abductive human ideas to train on?
Oh, wow. If we rely on machines to replace human thought rather than aid it, humanity stops generating those new abductive leaps of insight. The training data stops expanding.
Exactly. And the AI models will begin training on the output of other AI models.
Model collapse.
Yes. The machine land we are building will become an endless, stagnant loop. A closed system of model collapse, where AI recycles cheap imitations of human thought forever, amplifying the statistical noise and slowly degrading the very definition of intelligence, until we forget